said, please, can you just convince him to let me go? She said, I'll do anything, just let me go. And she even offered oral sex. I had her give me oral sex. She gave me oral sex. I fixed myself, I fixed my clothes. I put her back like I found her and went back into the living room and sat down.
What you just heard is only a glimpse into the unspeakable darkness that consumed the final hours of 21-year-old Channon Christian and 23-year-old Christopher Newsom. What should have been a quiet, uneventful night for a young couple in love turned into a nightmare no one could have imagined. Their vehicle was hijacked, and they found themselves at the mercy of a vicious gang. The sheer horror of what they endured would only come to light through painstaking forensic analysis and the emotional confessions of witnesses. As the layers of this case were peeled back, what emerged was a story so brutal, so haunting, it would shake even the most seasoned investigators to their core. On January 7, 2007, the Knoxville Police Department received a distressed call from Channon's mother, who was growing increasingly anxious after being unable to reach her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, Christopher. However, because the couple were both adults, officers couldn't act immediately and instead advised the families to begin searching on their own. A day before, Channon and her boyfriend Chris had planned a dinner date in their hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee. Channon arrived at her friend's apartment in Washington Ridge to get ready, while Chris was set to pick her up before heading to dinner. After their meal, they planned to meet up with friends for a late-night party. Around 9 p.m., Chris arrived at a friend's apartment. He parked his truck and walked over to Channon's car, a Toyota 4Runner, where he and Channon sat together for a while. What they didn't realize was that 4 men were silently watching them from close by. From that moment on, their fate was sealed. Channon Christian, born in April 1985 in Nacogdoches, Texas, moved with her family to Knoxville, Tennessee during her early childhood. Raised in a close-knit, middle-class home with her parents and older brother, she was known for her bright energy and uplifting presence. Channon shared a particularly strong and open bond with her mother, Dina, often confiding in her about all aspects of her life.
Both of my children were miracles. I was told I might never have children. When Chase was born, we were ecstatic. Then when Channon was born, we had our perfect family. She was a happy child who grew into a young woman who loved life. She was special, and she was beautiful inside and out. She had the prettiest big blue eyes and a gorgeous smile. Her hair was long and brown. She was 5'8.5", with the longest legs you've ever seen. She loved her family. She had her daddy wrapped around her little finger. He would melt every time she looked at him with those big blue eyes. She loved her brother Chase.
Channon was on the way to graduating in less than a year from the University of Tennessee before her life was tragically cut short. Christopher Newsom was born in September 1983 in Knoxville to older parents who hadn't expected to raise another child. With his siblings already grown, Chris brought new energy into the family. A gifted baseball player from a young age, Chris also had a creative side, crafting art and woodworking projects. After a post-graduation injury ended his baseball dreams, he shifted to carpentry, becoming a skilled and reliable craftsman. Chris and Channon first met through a mutual friend in 2006, and from there onwards, their relationship began to blossom. They were still in the early stages of dating, getting to know each other, and building a connection. Not long before the abduction, Chris had taken Channon to meet his parents, a step that hinted at how serious things were getting. Chris had even confided in his father that he was falling in love with Channon.
We would have told him that our son was a great person. He had a terrific smile. He had a great personality. He was an athlete. He was an artist. He loved all sports. He loved to play golf. He loved to fish. He loved his friends. He had a very caring personality, and I know how much he wanted to live, because 2 weeks before this happened, he called me and he said, "Mom, I sold my motorcycle. I said, Chris, you did? I said, I know how much you love that motorcycle. Why did you sell it? He said, because I want a life. I've got a reason to live now.
You met Shannon.
Was Channon. And when he met her, he was so happy that I guess he didn't care before whether he lived or died with that motorcycle. But when he found her, he wanted a life, and he said it. And that just really haunts me when I think about it now. But I would have told him that. And he was just a fine person. He helped anybody that needed help. He was an honest person. I think he took after his dad with that.
However, the two sets of parents had not yet had the chance to meet. That moment never came. Instead, Chris's parents received a chilling phone call from Shannon's mother, who shared the news that both of their children were missing. Chris had told his parents he might be out late visiting a friend, but when his mother tried calling him, there was no answer, and he never called back. When Channon didn't show up at her friend's party later that night, her best friend grew anxious. Channon wasn't answering calls, hadn't returned home, and wasn't responding to any messages. Concerned, her friend called Shannon's mother to let her know that something felt off. Around the same time, Dina received another call from Shannon's manager, asking why she hadn't shown up for work. That call only deepened her fears. Meanwhile, two of Chris's friends showed up at the Washington Ridge apartments to check on him since he hadn't replied to any of their messages either. They found his truck still parked outside, but Shannon's 4Runner was gone. The couple's families and friends took matters into their own hands. They started checking local hospitals, driving around the city, and reaching out to anyone who might have seen Chris and Channon, but no matter where they looked, there was no sign of them. Then, the search took a devastating turn. Chris's parents received the kind of call every parent dreads. A body had been discovered near the train tracks, and the description matched their son. It was January 7, 2007, when Chris's parents accepted the dark reality of their son being found dead. With that, Shannon's parents intensified their search for her, fearing the worst. Every hour, without Shannon's trace, deepened their fear. When their efforts to find her in the same area where Chris had been found came up empty, they turned to their final hope. Desperate, Shannon's parents contacted her phone service provider, pleading to trace her last known location. The phone service provider revealed that Shannon's phone had last pinged near the Cherry Street phone tower, a location notorious for criminal activity. It wasn't the kind of place someone would end up in by accident. People usually went there either because they lived there or for something shady. Alarmed by this discovery, Shannon's friends and family rushed to the area and began exploring every street and alley. During the search, they stumbled upon Shannon's Toyota 4Runner, and it didn't look right. The SUV was coated in thick layers of dirt and mud, completely unlike the spotless, well-kept condition Channon always maintained. Inside, it looked like someone had deliberately erased her presence. Her usual belongings, like her teddy bear, photos, phone charger, and iPod, were gone. The front seats had been pushed all the way back. The floorboard was filthy with thick mud, completely out of character for someone so particular about her car. Even the stickers she'd carefully placed on the windows had been peeled off. But the most chilling clue was a pack of cigarettes inside the SUV, something neither Channon nor Chris ever touched. Police were finally brought in to assist in the search for Channon, shifting the effort into a more focused investigation. While examining the SUV and nearby area, they came across an envelope that had been left behind. What seemed like a minor detail soon proved to be of the most importance. When processed, the envelope revealed fingerprints. The analysis identified them as belonging to Lamarcus Davidson, a man with a criminal record who lived at 2316 Chipman Street. That address was just 2 blocks away from where Shannon's vehicle had been found, giving the investigators a clear direction to follow. When police arrived at 2316 Chipman Street, the house appeared empty. But a closer search revealed a horrifying discovery. Shannon's lifeless body was found inside the kitchen, hidden in a trash can. Her body had been stuffed into at least 5 trash bags and concealed deep within the bin. As they continued searching the house, officers also recovered several of Shannon's and Chris's personal items, including her purse, clothing, shoes, and camera. Disturbingly, photographs had been ripped and partially burned. Chris's belongings were also there: his baseball caps, driver's license, and other items that had earlier been missing from Shannon's SUV were found packed into the same trash bags. Investigators also discovered shell casings at the scene, possibly the same ones used to end Chris's life.
My brother was doing some crazy and I think he said he was scared of him or something, and I was like, what you mean crazy? He said he had some and threw her in a trash can, and he was just acting crazy and he was scared of him.
Following this, police turned their attention to Lamarcus Davidson, the man who rented the house at 2316 Chipman Street. As the manhunt intensified, officers first managed to track down one of his accomplices, Eric Boyd. During questioning, Eric revealed Lamarcus's whereabouts. He was hiding out in an abandoned house. On January 11th, law enforcement finally caught up with him. Lamarcus was arrested at the vacant property, where police also found a pair of Chris's new athletic shoes and a .22 caliber high-standard revolver. He was immediately taken in for questioning. During the interrogation, Lamarcus gave 5 different conflicting accounts of what had happened. First, he claimed he had left the house on Friday and had no knowledge of what happened after his departure. Then, he shifted the blame to his brother, Latalvis Cobbins, claiming that Latalvis had shown up in Channon's SUV and that he hadn't seen either Channon or Chris with him. Each story Lamarcus spun was inconsistent and easily dismantled by evidence. None of them held up under scrutiny.
He told us that he had left his house Friday. As the interview progressed, his story changed. He said that he had spoken to his brother, and he was aware that there had been a carjacking, but he had never seen the victims. And then the story changed again to where he was at the house when his brother and George Thomas arrived with the victim's 4Runner, and that he had seen the victims in the back of the 4Runner, and then he had left. And then the story changed, I believe, again. And he was there when the victims arrived with his brother and George Thomas.
Lamarcus insisted that he had not been sexually involved with Channon and confidently claimed that no DNA evidence existed that linked him to her. However, forensic evidence told a different and undeniable story. DNA recovered from Channon's body revealed the presence of both Lamarcus Davidson and his brother, Latalvis Cobbins. Further investigation confirmed that their DNA was also found on Channon's clothing, including her jeans, camisole, and sweater, leaving no doubt about their brutal involvement in the heinous crime. Lamarcus Davidson was a local drug dealer who, along with his brother Latalvis and friends George Thomas and Eric Boyd, set their sights on Chris and Channon when they were in the parking lot on the night of the abduction. There wasn't an obvious reason why they had chosen them that night. They didn't know the couple but thought about them as an easy target for their regular carjacking. In an instant, the peaceful night turned into a nightmare as they rushed in, guns drawn, forcing Channon and Chris into the back seat of her 4Runner. They bound their hands behind their backs and drove them to a rundown rental house at 2316 Chipman Street. At the house, the 4 men were joined by Vanessa Coleman, who was seen waiting outside. To this day, the exact reason why what seemed like a carjacking turned into a prolonged and horrific kidnapping remains unclear. It's possible that the original intent was robbery, but once inside the house, Chris and Channon were separated and restrained. That marked the beginning of a series of brutal and degrading acts that would forever change the course of their lives. Chris was the first to endure the horrifying abuse. He was subjected to extreme physical and sexual violence, sodomized with a foreign object, likely the broken leg of a chair. The assault caused severe internal injuries, including lacerations and bruising. Forensic evidence suggested he may have been raped by at least one of his attackers. After roughly 1 to 2 hours of unimaginable torment, Chris was taken outside. Barefoot and gagged with socks, he wore only a t-shirt and underwear in the cold night air. His hands were still bound behind his back, and a dog leash was tied around his neck, used to prevent any chance of escape. They took him to the area near the railway tracks. There, Chris was forced to kneel down. His ankles were then bound tightly with his own belt, and his shirt was pulled over his head to blind him. What followed was a slow, merciless execution. The first shot struck him in the back of the neck, grazing between his neck and shoulder. Chris fell forward, face down, still alive. Then came another shot, this time to his spinal cord, paralyzing him. But even then, he was not yet dead. Finally, one of the men placed the pistol just above his right ear and fired a final shot into his skull, ending his life most brutally. Soon after the execution, the men wrapped Chris's body tightly in a comforter. They poured gasoline over his lifeless body and set it on fire.
The photograph depicts the body as is, the way it was found at the scene. The train tracks, of course, are running in this upper part of the photograph, and you can see that the body was found face up. The upper part of the body severely charred. There were some clothing items and some wrap cloth or piece of clothing that it's over the face. And you can also observe that the lower part of the body doesn't really have any garments. It looks like there was nothing there covering the legs. In the ankle region, there was a leather belt, in addition to some other strip of either a bed sheet. And you can see that one of the arms is bent and under the body. The other one is twisted. Part of this position and the contractures that happen in the joints is because of the generated heat. So I can tell just by the way the contractures occurred in the knees and elbows that the body was subject to very high heat for some time as it was burning, of course.
But Shannon's ordeal was far from over. Alone in the house with Vanessa Coleman, she was unaware of what was about to come. At some point during the night, she was forced to call her father and claim she had changed plans, telling him she would be home later. It was the last time anyone would hear her voice. Over the next several hours, Channon was subjected to prolonged sexual and physical abuse at the hands of her captors. She was physically assaulted, restrained, and repeatedly raped. The injuries she suffered in her mouth and vagina were severe and revealed the horrifying extent of the cruelty inflicted upon her. Prosecutors believe that the attackers tied her to a chair and raped her orally. The frenulum connecting her lip and gum had been torn away as her mouth was forced open. She was left injured, frightened, and isolated before she was ultimately killed. She was beaten and stomped on the head, leaving her with severe head trauma. Deep bruises and signs of hemorrhaging covered her legs, arms, back, and other parts of her body. Now, the attackers turned to one final, chilling act, erasing every trace of evidence. In a calculated attempt to destroy DNA, they forced bleach down Shannon's throat. They also poured it over her genitals, scrubbing the area in a desperate effort to remove anything that could tie them to the crime. After this, they bound her legs tightly against her chest and forced her head forward until it touched her knees. Using pieces of curtain and bed sheets, they tied her neck to her ankles and then sealed her head inside a small trash bag.
And your refrigerator again with a gas can beside it. And there's the bottle of bleach cleaner and the red solution. And the garbage bag and the garbage can. And there's the belt and the white glove. And there's a garbage can. And there's her arm. That's how it was when we found it. Now we're going back out to the utility room.
Once she was turned and bound, they sealed her into 5 separate trash bags and placed her into a household garbage bin, covering her with bed sheets and shutting the lid. Horrifyingly, Channon was still alive when they left her there. She died slowly and alone, in the dark, for 10 to 30 agonizing minutes from positional and confined space asphyxiation.
So we went in the living room and sat there. Vanessa's crying. I'm holding her, telling her to stop crying. My brother ties the girl up in a fetal position. So he ties the girl up. He ties the girl up, put her in the garbage can. Made all of us go in the back room. He got back on the phone. So that was early Monday morning. So it was Sunday night, Monday morning, the mid hours. He as it started to get daylight, I say around, honestly, I don't know what time it was, but after it got daylight, he left. Then when he did leave, and the three of us were there, I said, "Come on, y'all, let's go." We got up out of there. We walked all the way to Vince's house. It took a few hours, but we walked down there to Vince's house. I told Vince what happened. I said, "Man, my brother's tripping. Man, he didn't carjack and kill some people, man."
After committing their horrific acts, the perpetrators left the scene, taking with them all of Channon's remaining belongings. With evidence piling up and the horrifying truth beginning to take shape, investigators widened their net. On January 11, 2007, their search led them to a home in Lebanon, Kentucky, where George Thomas, LaTalvis Cobbins, and Vanessa Coleman were found hiding. They had been monitoring news reports and online coverage of the case, likely aware that the law was closing in. As officers combed through the house, they discovered chilling evidence. Shannon's bag and her clothes were still there, further confirming the group's direct involvement in the tragic abduction and brutal murders.
The state again hammered that with each witness that the state put up. Included on the witness list today were Knoxville Police Department crime scene technicians Tim Shade, Dan Crenshaw, Joe Cox. All of those three men described various items of evidence that were seized from Chipman Street. There were mounds of items found in that house that belonged to Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. That included clothing, Chris's ball caps, Shannon's toiletries, her photographs, a CD that she had made, just all the things that these kids had in their possession on the night that they disappeared in January 2007. As these crime scene technicians testified, Lamarcus Davidson's fingerprints were all over these items.
When LaTalvis Cobbins was brought in for questioning, he immediately distanced himself from the savage crimes. He claimed that he, his brother Lamarcus Davidson, and Eric Boyd had simply gone to the apartments to meet a girl. While there, he said they spotted a man and a woman sitting in an SUV. According to LaTalvis, it was Lamarcus and Eric who suddenly decided to carjack the couple and forced him to follow them back to the Chipman Street house. Once there, he alleged that Lamarcus took the woman into a bedroom while Eric drove off with the man, only to return alone sometime later. Throughout his statement, LaTalvis insisted he had no part in the violence and denied ever touching the woman.
So, next thing I know, we pulled back in a parking spot. He like, that's her apartment right up there. So we pulled back, he puts the car in park, but he never turns the car off. He puts it in park, he looks at my brother, and they both jump out of the car. They run right in front of where we just parked to this white SUV. I noticed at the SUV, it was a girl sitting in the driver's side and a guy standing at the driver's side. The door is open and they're hugging or kissing or something. So My brother and EA carjacked these people, and I gets out of the car, man, what y'all doing? What's going on? What y'all doing? So they pull out. He said, man, follow us. I said, man, what are y'all doing? I'm finna go back to the house. I don't want nothing to do with it. Y'all tripping, man. Y'all tripping. He was like, man, we finna go back to the house. We going back to the house. Just follow us. You don't know where you going. Just follow us. So I said, man. So I get back in the car, and I'm not knowing what to do, what's going on. So I'm not familiar with Knoxville. So I said, man, all right, I'm gonna follow y'all.
During the interrogation of Vanessa Coleman, she claimed to be innocent and stated that she was being held hostage by Lamaricus and the others. However, the journal found in the house told a different story. The entry from January 9th read, "Last night was one of a kind. We stayed with a crackhead that is cool as hell. It snowed a little bit, but it's already melted. Let's talk about adventures. I had one hell of an adventure since I've been in the big TN. It's a crazy world these days, but I love the fun adventures and lessons that I've learned. It's going to be a long, interesting year." After an 8-day trial in October 2009, the jury found Lamaricus Davidson guilty of all charges, including 16 counts of first-degree felony murder, 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder, 2 counts of especially aggravated robbery, 4 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 9 counts of aggravated rape of Channon, 3 counts of facilitation of aggravated rape of Chris, and theft charges related to property valued at different amounts. The jury ultimately imposed 2 death sentences on Lamaricus for his heinous crimes, and he is now on death row.
With regard to the count charging Mr. Davidson with the first-degree felony murder of Hugh Christopher Newsom, that is counts 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, 13, and 14. What is the decision of the jury as to what the punishment should be with regard to those counts?
Punishment is death.
A Knox County jury today imposed a death sentence on convicted ringleader Lamaricus Davidson in the killings of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. They pronounced death on felony murder and first-degree murder for Chris's death, and also death as punishment for the first-degree murder and felony murder of Channon Christian. The jury concluded that the killings were especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel, involved torture, were committed knowingly, that there was mutilation of Chris's body via the fire that was set after his death.
George Thomas was convicted of first-degree murder, especially aggravated robbery, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape. He received 2 life sentences for the murder convictions, plus 25 years for his other convictions. Latalvis Cobbins was convicted of first-degree murder, facilitation of first-degree murder, especially aggravated robbery, especially aggravated kidnapping, facilitation of especially aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape. He received a total effective sentence of life without parole, plus 100 years. George and Latalvis are serving their life sentences at the Northeast Correctional Complex in Mountain City, Tennessee. Vanessa Coleman was convicted of facilitation of first-degree murder, facilitation of aggravated kidnapping, facilitation of rape, and facilitation of misdemeanor theft. She received a total effective sentence of 35 years. She is serving her sentence at Tennessee Prison for Women in Nashville. After more than a decade, Eric Boyd finally stood trial. On August 13, 2019, a jury found him guilty on multiple charges, including premeditated first-degree murder, carjacking, robbery, and kidnapping. He received a life sentence for the murder conviction, along with an additional 90 years in prison for the remaining charges. Eric Boyd is currently serving his sentence in a federal prison. What are your thoughts on the case and the justice served to those responsible for such unimaginable horrors? Comment down your thoughts below.